Hey guys, welcome back to Unreal Labs. Today we're going to configure DHCP on the Cisco switch. Pretty simple lab. There's a couple caveats. We're going to be doing some reserving some IP addresses. We're also going to do some manual bindings and show you how that works. So let's jump into it. As you can see, GNS3, we have building 2, and we have the HQ. We're going to configure switch 3. I'm going to move this over here so it's a little bit bigger. So we're going to configure switch 3 with another VLAN. It's going to be VLAN 30. That VLAN is going to have DHCP configured. It's going to be running a 192.168.2.0/24 subnet. And we're going to put PC6 and PC7 in that VLAN 2. So let's jump right in. Let's switch over to Solar Putty. And we are on switch 3 here. So let's get started. All right, so config T, IP DHCP pool is going to set up the DHCP pool, and we're going to name it, let's do Unreal DHCP for Unreal, and then we're going to specify the network, which will be 192.168.2.0. with a /24, right? 255.255.255.0. Let's configure the default router, the 2.1. This will be the, we haven't configured it yet, but this will be the VLAN 30's layer 3 interface. Let's do some DNS servers. So 8.8.8.8. That should be fine. We don't have internet connected to this lab, but in the real world, you would. So domain name, possibly, anyways. We'll do unreallabs.local. And we'll need to set up a lease. And you can do that in days, hours, minutes, a combination of both. We'll do 1 day, but as you can see, you can space it, ? Then it gives you hours. Space it, ? There's your minute settings. So we'll do 1 day, one full 24 hours. And let's do some exclusions. Actually, we need to get out of that. So we'll back up and do a show run. And here we go. So our IP DHCP pool has been created. It's called Unreal DHCP. We set up the network, the default route, DNS server domain name. So now we're going to put some exclusions in that. I want to hold out, like, let's do 1 through 10. And so the next IP, if it did send a lease out, it would start at 11. So let's go back into configuration T, or configure terminal, IP DHCP exclude address. And so I'm going to question mark that real quick. So we're going to start at the low, and then we're going to assign the high. So 192.168.2.1. Let me question mark that so you guys can see it. That would be the high, 192.168.2.10, right? That's what we said. So we're happy with that. And let's, now, what do we want to do? Let's, we got to create our VLAN, right? Configure T, VLAN 30. And we'll name it, let's name it accounting. I don't know. Sounds good. Now let's make it a layer 3 interface. So interface VLAN 30. I'm going to wait for just a second as this pops up, this line protocol. It's going to show it's down. We don't have any ports configured in that VLAN 30, so it'll be down right now. IP address 192.168. I could type 2.1 with a /24. Okay. And we're going to no shut that. We'll back 1 level back down, back to configuration terminal, and we're going to do, we need to configure, to go back to the GNS3 picture here, we need to configure gig 01 and gig 02 in VLAN 30. So let's do that. Switch back to Solar Putty here. So interface range, we'll do both at the same time. 2. So remember, you guys know this, switch port mode access. makes it an access port. switch port access VLAN 30. We're going to put them through VLAN 30, and then we'll no shut those just in case they are shut down. If we wait a second, we should see VLAN 30 come back up. Yeah, this is perfect time for a sip of coffee or tea or your beverage of preference. Maybe, maybe not. Show interface VLAN 30. Or I want to show interface. There it is. I was impatient. See. All right, so we're up there. Let's do some show commands to see if anything's been leased out. Show IP DHCP binding. And we don't have anything there. Let's check the server out. Show IP DHCP pool. So this is going to show all the pools we have configured. And as you can see, pool DHCP, Unreal DHCP here. We're not using anything. Nothing. Here's our index and our range, but we haven't got anything going yet. So let's go to PC6 and IP. Let's change that to DHCP real quick. See what it pulls. All right, so it's got 11. That's good. So if we go back to switch 3 and run the show binding, we can see that the IP address 2.11 is being used by this MAC address, which is kind of funky. It's got this .00 on the end. And then VLAN 30. So let's go to PC7 IP. Let's set it to DHCP. All right, and it's pulled 12, so we can show that here. So we should see both. So now let's create a reservation for PC7. Let's say like we don't want it on 12. We want it on 2.100. So let's set that up here. So we're going to need to copy this what it calls a hardware address username. We're going to need to grab that for PC7 here. And we're going to go into configure terminal again. And we're going to actually have to create another pool for this reservation. So IP DHCP pool, and then I'll call it manual binding. All right, and then we'll do a host, and we're going to give it an IP address that we want to specify, so 192.168.2.100. So we'll add that. And then we're going to do see options here. So we could do hardware address. I'm going to use client identifier. And I'm going to paste that MAC address in that we pulled off the binding. So we did what we knew. So, oh, that binding's already there. So what we're going to need to do is clear that. So let's clear, actually let's get back. So I exit out, clear. Like I said, there's a lot of options for everything. IP, DHCP, binding. And if you question mark that, we could specify everything. We could wipe everything out, the VRF, or we could do 2.12? Yeah, 2.12. So let's drop 2.12. And if we show IP DHCP binding, if I can talk there, we've wiped 12 out of our config. So back, let's do show run. Let's see how far we got here. Let's do show run. And so we need to continue there, but we've got the host still in there, so just wanted to make sure that was actually in the config right now. So IP DHCP pool, manual binding, and then we were going to do client identifier, right? And we'll paste that address in there. And I think the other setting, I think I want to do client name. Let's give it a name here so we know, like this is PC7. Do show run. Let's see the run. All right, perfect. So here's our main scope for every PC that would join VLAN 30 in building 2. Here's our scope or our pool with the manual binding. Now you need to know another one if you had another PC. So if you had PC 8 that needed something manual, you would have to create another pool, manual binding PC 8, whatever you want to name it, and then use its identifier. So if we go back over to PC 7, I'm hoping this will work. Sometimes this is a little buggy, but let's see what happens. See what it pulls after this. Should be what we specified was 2.100. Yeah, perfect. So it now has 2.100 as the IP, and that's what we wanted in the GNS3 setup that we have going on. So one last thing, I think you guys were thinking about it. Routing. Let's do some communication tests. So let's ping 2.11. That would be PC6. We're good there. Let's do VLAN 10 PC, PC5. Whoops, let me switch you over to Solar Putty here. So there's 2.11 was successful from PC7, and then so PC6 and then PC5. But let me switch back over to GNS3 here. The switching over on my video cuts is not great, but I'm just getting started. So let's try to ping PC4 and PC3, or even the VLAN interface is up on switch 1. So let's try that. Let me switch over to Solar Putty. Ping 10.0.0.1. See if we can get there. We're not going to be successful, but I figured you guys are so smart, you already knew that. So we'll do one PC, we won't do two and bore you with a bunch of pings that fail. And yeah, we're seeing the timeouts. So what we got to do is go to switch 1, right? We need to tell switch 1 where to send this. So show IP route. So the only route in our table here is just a 1.0. So let's add that. Oops. /24, right? It's actually going to be the same default gateway. Now we could make a bigger network to include both these just with one route. That'd be more efficient, really, would be to subnet this, to give it a bigger or a less restrictive subnet mask on this route. So we would only have one line, but we will just keep it this way right now. Maybe we'll do that when we start. Well, we'll do that definitely when we start doing dynamic routing. So this will be 100.2 back to that gateway on switch 3. Switch 3's routed port that we did in the video before this one. So we'll end that and we'll go back to PC7 and we should be successful. Yeah, there we go. There's VLAN 10's interface on excuse me, switch 1. And there's PC4. So VLAN 10 is good and PC4 is good. Let's do VLAN 20 there. That's good. So there you go. That's the simple way of adding a DHCP scope to a Cisco switch. This is pretty handy if you got access points or LOT devices. I would try to use a Microsoft server if I was in a business environment, using like the IP helper command. And that we can talk about that really quick. So if we went into one of these VLANs, do show VLAN brief, we'll just 10 or 30, let's just say 30. So interface VLAN 30. What I would normally do if there was a Microsoft server that you would configure the scope on Microsoft. I have some videos of that, check them out. But you would need to have an IP helper address to point to that Microsoft server. And we could actually go into a video on how DHCP, hopefully, you know, how it works. But we need to make sure we can get our broadcast over to that Microsoft server, and it identifies it as coming from that whatever network or subnet you have configured. And that's, you need to have that scope configured on that Microsoft server also. And then it would pull an address and send it back down, so you could have that Microsoft server in HQ, and it would be pulling addresses across the wire here to PC7. I need to kind of redo that GNS3 lab I have, so I can start adding some VMs inside of GNS3, or we can do that maybe through my physical equipment, which is fine too. I'm just trying to kind of have some fun with GNS3 and see how far I can kind of stress my equipment out. As you can see, I'm not too far. I'm only using like 14% of my memory, and my CPU is a little lacking. It's like an i3 HP server, so it's not stellar, but just to show you, like, you don't need super great equipment all the time. If you're doing the Cisco viral stuff with the later routers, like, it is going to tax it. It's going to be slow, but you can get by, you know, doing some pretty good setups, especially for like ccna, definitely. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that. And let's actually, before we end the video, let's do a show IP DHCP binding. And you'll see that both those addresses are leased out. And then as you notice, like, this has an expiration of 1 day. The time's off, I think, a little bit. No, it's actually pretty good. And this one has actually infinite, excuse me if I could speak. So it's never going to try to renew that, which is what we want, right? Because we want to actually have it kind of act like a static IP, statically set IP that you'd have. Let's do show IP DHCP pool, and we can see some statistics on what we got going on. So as you can see here, Unreal DHCP pool, it's got one leased, right? And we had to make another pool, the manual binding pool, to get that static, and that's leased also, so it's reflecting both. So this is never going to grow, and it's, as you can see, the range here, it's only one IP, 2.100 to 2.100, where the Unreal DHCP is 2.1 to 2.254. But it does have 11 exclusions because we set that, and then a total of 254 devices, which it doesn't have all those, right? Because we've excluded 10. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys watching. Like and subscribe. If you have some questions, leave a comment. Be happy to answer anything the best I can. Try to do some research for you. If you guys have a problem that you're working on, I do this daily, so mainly networking, but Microsoft, I do quite a bit of Microsoft and SAN stuff. So if you guys have some questions, leave a comment, see if I can help you out. That's what I do. Appreciate your time. Thanks again.